I would advise you to look into this more attentively. There is no such thing as she is here, she is here. You know, this is a wrong language, and I bust that language all the time, on every occasion. This is a limitation of the language and also perverse nature of understanding of what the Kundalini is.
Hello.
Hello?
My question is about the attention when there's trauma in family background. I had a big God experience 2 years ago, and then my Kundalini rise up, and now she's here. And I'm meditating with who am I, and doing bhakti yoga and stuff like that in my sadhana. But the emotional trauma with family comes back again and again and again. And the question is, the attention in the situation, should it be like, they trigger it, and my intuition said, no, I'm not the young Martin. I go out of the situation. Or is the right solution to realize, okay, these old hurtings, and what to do? Because I can say in the situation, who has these feelings? Who has these feelings? I. Who am I? Okay. And then the energy comes back and I can flow. But, the balance is very hard to find. Thank you.
And just for clarity's sake, you've taken Kundalini course, no?
No.
No. Okay. That's just wanted to clarify something. Okay. And I presume you are not falling onto the process of self-inquiry. You just gave it as an example. Shall I do that? Right? Who is having these feelings? Who is having these sensations? Who is like, I. This is not something you practice. You make it as an example, right? You gave it as a...
I don't understand the question, sorry.
No, it is I who don't understand the question.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. Okay.
So I just wanted I want to understand, when you gave this example, shall I do this? Who is experiencing that? Did you give this as an example of what you should be or should not be doing, or you actually doing it? Are you using the self-inquiry? I just want to make sure before
I do it, yeah.
You do? Okay.
But sometimes I can't do it with the intention it needs.
Okay.
And it's a hard work.
Mm-hmm. And just again, for clarity's sake, how long were you aware of this work of myself as someone who holds this? Like, how long you've been, like, are you familiar with the work I do? Have you been,
No.
No. No, like, okay, that makes it now getting there, we're getting warmer. So how long ago have you learned about this work? In other words, what the heck are you doing here, man? Can you just give me the straightforward answer? Like, when did you learn about it so that you came here? Last Friday, 2 months ago, 1 year ago, less?
I'm here in Vienna.
You live in Vienna?
I live in Vienna, yeah.
So how?
Thank you for this question.
So you've learned about, when did you learn about this guy who is sitting and speaking right now, here?
I think 3 weeks ago.
3 weeks ago. Okay, that makes perfect sense. I'm good now. Thank you.
Okay,
I can
you're
speak
welcome.
to that. Yeah. Now it makes perfect sense. And I'll tell you why. Because if you were a little bit more familiar with this work, not, there are people who have, like for instance, I was deeply touched. I'm going to just do a bit of a kind of a self-scratching here. Like, is nobody scratching my back? And I scratch my back. Yeah. You know what it means, right? It's a British, I've lived in England, in London for 18 years. I picked up all this stuff, okay? So you have to put up with it. You have to really. I'm full of these proverbs. Scratching your back, it's meaning complimenting oneself. And usually someone else scratching someone's back. So I said, I'm going to scratch my own back now. I'm going to compliment myself. Give myself a compliment. Okay?
Why is it important for me?
Now, the best you can do is to simply listen. Relax and listen. Relax and listen, because all this is tailored to you and to you only right now. Nothing is at your expense. You will learn, you will not find a deadlier, serious person than myself. This was very, very clearly and very perceptibly communicated here. You see? I fool around, but none of that is at the expense. I love nothing more than a good laughter. But if that doesn't serve you, I don't own my keep, and I hate that. You see? I hate that. So, when I lip my highest quality Japanese tea in the morning, I want to feel that it's not just an indulgence for nothing. So I'm going to scratch my back. So in Mexico, we had the last year a 10-day program, which we extended now, week-long programs. We've decided these week-long programs will become 10-day programs. For reasons I can explain, but it's obvious. There was one lady who sat very quiet, except beautifully harmonizing and vocalizing throughout, because this is a phenomenon of this work, and it's a phenomenon of our time. And when we gather, if you are to come to the weekend, there will be a lot of harmonization here. And people will vocalize, even people who have never vocalized. Okay? Mm-hmm. And she vocalized quietly, and then on the last day, or just before the end of the program, 10-day program, she just asked the microphone not to ask questions. She wanted to simply lay something bare open. And she said, I've been following you for many, many, many years. I was just curious how many. She says, from the day you appeared in the internet, from the day you started your YouTube channel, I was following. I did not miss one video. Everywhere you spoke, I just wanted to say how happy I am to be here. In that, it's like, of course, it was very emotional for me, And it could be taken as a this and that, but to me it was it's like really left that, you see? So someone like that lady, she would have never asked a question like that, even if it has a lot of maybe analogies there. There's also a lot of Kundalini activity. She listened to me in secret hopes that one day it will happen to her. And as she developed, and many people in this audience will confirm that I'm not making it up. Quite few people right now here. It just happened. Lee was there, Linda was there, Dattatreya was there, Melissa was there. Who else? Well, that's enough. Remember the exchanges? And that 1 year, 1 day, it happened to her. So she was listening already in a different level of consciousness as she was going through the process, you see? And yet it's the first time she actually came to the program. She came, you see? So this is the scratching my own back part. So I totally understand. So first of all, I will be now like almost like a doctor with diagnosis, because this is very important that we don't beat about the bush and we go to the clarity, okay? I would advise you to look into this more attentively. There is no such thing as she is here, she is here. You know, this is a wrong language, and I bust that language all the time, on every occasion. This is a limitation of the language and also perverse nature of understanding of what the Kundalini is. The platform we speak from and stand on is a platform which gave the world term, Shri Kundalini. It comes from the Shaivites, before it was held on by the Hatha yogis and popularized through scriptures, some of which were translated into English as early on as the end of the 19th century by John Woodruffy, Arthur Avalon pen name, known for under pen name Arthur Avalon, who wrote The Serpent Power, this thick volume, over 100 years ago, as a governor in India, as a Brit. And he translated Shat Chakra Nirupana, of which I spoke just now and paid tribute to Carl Jung in Zurich only a week ago. To this day. Isn't that so? No, maybe I'm dreaming. Am I dreaming? Yeah? 2 weeks, right? 2 weeks in Zurich, like this on Friday. Some of these texts were more popularized, and this is also where the emphasis on chakras, when in the Kundalini course, this is why I've asked you, because if you took Kundalini course, you would have never even formulated your question like that. It's my own magnus opum, 20 years of work, 10 of which is in clinical condition working with people, on the road, culminating in a 3-month comprehensive course, which one day we will turn as our community into a book, but not yet, because it's a monumental task. Monumental. So I will begin that if Kundalini reaches, as it were, when spoken in that language, to where you pointed, which you pointed to the so-called chakra of command center, Ajna. There are no psychic material left to deal with. If, however, there is a slightest possibility that that happened, and there is psychic material experienced, the chances are that there is an erroneous ascent took place. Most likely, vajranadi has been taken for the utilization because that's the quickest. We experience that on a regular basis. There are videos on that. Google my name and vajranadi or deflected ascents, and you will see plenty of videos on that topic. I've been covering this year after year after year until we really nailed it in the Kundalini course, when we talked about all this, with respect also to the Kundalini Vidya, where only 6 pathways that Kundalini can travel are talked in great detail, out of which only 3 are deemed to bring success. When Kundalini is at the level of Ajna, no psychic material left whatsoever. You are in the psychic region itself. There's nothing left there. If that's the case of proper ascent. Ascent through the Sushumna shaft. Within the Sushumna, or better still through Chitrini. Brahmanadi reserved for few chosen ones. We don't talk about it. It's pointless to talk about it. So we omit that. It's the so-called elevator path to God. Nothing to write home about. People who went through this ascent, then they don't leave spiritual autobiographies. And most likely they don't work with people, because these are supreme beings. These beings can work from the level of reality. They don't need to say a word. They don't need to be in the presence of people. You see? Maybe there are a handful of them in the last 100 years. Maybe I'm exaggerating. Maybe the demography and the statistics are higher. But it's extremely rare, and even the most exalted examples known in India, where that is really known, they cannot locate exact name and whereabouts of whom that happened. But tradition speaks about that. So, if there is some psychic material in the form of trauma, bypassing took place, you see? If what you're saying, that Kundalini is being experienced in the higher cortexes, in where you pointed out, as the result of ascent, which could have taken place through vajranadi, which unabstractedly grows from the second chakra straight into the inside the skull, but it terminates below the plateau. And there is no nadi, you know the term nadi? That leads to continue the journey. So it's destined to fall down. Vajranadi is experienced by every human being upon sexual arousal. So in other words, it's a nadi which doesn't need to be purified. In most human beings, this is an active nadi. It's a nadi which we all experience during sexual arousal. And this is why orgasm, often accompanied by this so-called spiritualized phenomena, lights, right? Like explosion of light, what is it, French call it, right? Little death, right? All the climax, orgasm, is spoken of as a little death. Because there's this cessation of the sense of identity, even if temporarily. It's all because of the vajranadi. But that ascent is not considered to be a proper ascent, and it doesn't go through respective psychic centers. It doesn't go through the chakras. You see? It goes through the shaft of its own. Within the Sushumna, there is Vajranadi. Sushumna is made out of 4 nadis altogether. 4. Brahmanadi, Chitrini Nadi, Vajra, and Sushumna, as the main shaft. And therefore, all classical texts on yoga always emphasize that awakening and ascent is better to go through Sushumna. Let's lay speculations asunder. Let's not try to go quick manner here. So Sushumna ascend. So that then there is this stagely ascend where no psychic center is left behind to do the work. But it happens because Kundalini can also ascend through the respective left and right nadis, which are known as Lakshmi and Saraswati, that are not even part of Sushumna. They run alongside. And both are known for their own respective unique manner of ascent, where some visit certain chakras. For example, I think that's the Lakshmi goes and opens the heart. So it goes from the place of where the awakening took place, but Sushumna is clogged, not opened. So the force of Kundalini is strong enough, so it pushes itself in every dimension of the internal anatomy and looks for a place to ascend. And it can, if it enters the Lakshmi, it will quickly proceed and first go into the heart, and accompanied by this heart-opening experience, and proceed further, but again, not in the Sushumna. So in other words, it's not joining the Sushumna there. If that was the case, fine. This bypassing would be dealt with after. It's a very big theme. it goes out. So in other words, you see what it does? It does this to the heart, opens it, and then again takes the peripheral road. And again terminates below the plateau, doesn't give access to the coveted opening of the fontanel and the top of the head, the so-called Brahmarandra, the open to oneness, the pathway to oneness. So the opening, Brahmarandra, opening to Brahman. Brahman, as you know, is the Sanskrit term for absolute reality. So first of all, these are the basics. So I would not either re-examine what really is taking place so that you don't kind of crystallize this understanding that Kundalini is now, where you point it out, and yet you have this psychic phenomena associated with trauma that keeps presenting itself. Because it shouldn't be the case, you see. Already, traumas are addressed at the lower levels, at the lower stages. More rarely, but maybe now day and age, it happens more often because none of us do this work. So this often happens in whichever way it happens. We're not going to go there now. It's a kind of a topic in its own right. And because of that, the, as it were, container is different. So the psychological work is not done. And if there is this ascent that is facilitated straight into the cortexes without Kundalini going and activating chakras, which is the only way chakras can be activated. New Age has a big bias in speaking about chakras. And no ancient text, Shaivite text, ever speaks about that. You see? Chakras are spoken as spokes. This is the very important adjustments we made in the course, which I'm very happy about, because it's also taking us before and prior to the time where a more metaphorical picture is given, particularly due to that very now widely available text, Chakra Nirupana, which deals with the minute description of every psychic center. Minute description. That's what fascinated Carl Jung, because that's the copy he had. He read Arthur Avalon and the translation of that. It is fascinating stuff. So he put things 2 and 2 together. I gave that critical analysis as well. We published it just now. The team did a fantastic job in producing it in part 1, part 2 videos, where the emphasis is all given into that because it served Jung's own work. It was done, quite frankly, also, I'm sure he wasn't just thinking that this is in service of himself. I'm sure there was a big part of him thinking that he's serving humanity here. But the fate have it, he just derailed the whole thing. Emphasis wrong, astray. See? Very little about Kundalini, all about the chakras. But even if from that point of view, all this more metaphorical, again, concealed for a reason, for a purpose, where we go into this elaborate description of every chakra, and even the term lotuses, you see, took such a stronghold now. In Shaivite texts, they were never addressed as lotuses. Wheels of energy, that's a proper Sanskrit term. Wheels of energy, vortexes of energy. No lotuses there, no flowers. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that is? Because yogis began to utilize the part of Tantra which deals with imagination, visualization. And visualization is an important part of Tantra, which plays much less role, if any, in other non-dual traditions, let's say, of classical Advaita Vedanta. But in Tantra, visualizations are supremely important, and for a reason. I'm not going to go into the reasons now because it's going to turn into a discourse of its own right. But it is due to the visualization or the emphasis on visualizations that the elaborate picture of chakras rose, because they had to be, wheels of energy, psychic centers, had to be turned into a workable with material down to a pictorial level. You see? Hence the whole notion of chakras as lotuses is to work with. So now more towards what you shared. So if there is this reoccurring, this is very good that you speak to that and self-examine that, because what Kundalini grants us, one of the greatest gifts of Kundalini, is the power inherent in consciousness, which Kundalini is as a term. Kundalini is consciousness. And it affords the possibility where anything that prior to that was beyond of the access of our conscious mind being brought to the conscious level. This is the true assimilation and reintegration of all traumatic experience into the fabric of our awareness. This is when we can metabolize any unprocessed information, that is, any unprocessed experience, and reintegrate that back into the wholeness that we are. You see? And I speak about this, hopefully with the degree of authority and confidence, because I went through this process firsthand, and I can tell you how certain things that were beyond any reach, and yet they were there. I can even speak to you to the minute accuracy of what was there in the background of experiences, at the somatic and psychosomatic level, and how it all cleared. And I've witnessed and worked with people where that process of the reabsorption took place. When Kundalini blessed us with the process which is inseparable from what Kundalini is known for, because that's what it does. It brings all that what prior to that was at the level of the unconscious. This is where perhaps some of the valid insights on part of the Carl Jung, that A, Kundalini is the power behind individuation, and B is that it rules the unconscious. But he limited himself there, of course, because Kundalini is consciousness itself. It's not just some kind of power. Again, I would highly recommend you to visit, to check these videos. You know, they are very accessible. They're spoken in plain English, nothing really complicated. So, but what I want to rather again direct your attention is that the work that we do on ourselves when Kundalini is active is a very different kind of work that one would do if Kundalini, let's say, idle in a state of homeostasis. Because it's not the psychological work that we do, you see? Because this work is done, as it were, on our behalf now. Because the greater power of awareness now awake to itself. It's not awake to me or to you. Therefore, no one who is in true understanding of that ever speaks about it like, my Kundalini is here. That already shows that it's carrying burden of ignorance and bringing that ignorance through language into this, you see? We are in Kundalini. Not Kundalini is in us. I will now proceed to the very important also practical aspects and read Ramana Maharshi, not interpretations, Ramana Maharshi. There are works of Ramana Maharshi available, discourses, dialogues, meticulously translated, Fairfield Library, fair use, under the fair use license, all out there, downloadable. So let's clarify a few things with the help of the authority of Ramana Maharshi. And I've used that very often because to debunk these biases that are proliferating in the, among the non-dual teachers, even to this day, even those who consider themselves teaching in the lineage of Ramana Maharshi. So there's two things here. First of all, with regard to this what we just spoke, Ramana Maharshi, there's a beautiful interaction where he speaks to a close circle of those who press these answers on him, often scholars, those who understand things, you see? The people who gathered around him were, of course, plenty of simple folk, but these discourses, simple folk didn't ask these questions. They were receiving darshan, that's all. They were receiving the darshan of the great sage. But they were scholars, and they would ask questions, pandits. So there was this interaction and about Kundalini, Sushumna, right, all this. And Ramana Maharshi responded to clarify, which I hoped would suffice once for all, to establish this, that Kundalini is not an alternative way, as some would have it, as some would prefer to give it, nor it is some kind of undesirable set of circumstances that one is subjected to, and in fact the spiritual work is totally something else. Contrary to that, Ramana Maharshi's answer is like piercing the target straight into the heart of the matter. He says, Jnani would use the method of self-inquiry, the man who uses the marga of knowledge, the path of knowledge. Yogi would work with breath and forcibly control life force. But both aim at the result of awakening the Devi, the Shakti, so that upon awakening it can enter Sushumna and the process unfolds from there on spontaneously. But both Jnani and Yogi do the same thing, but using different methodology. Self-inquiry is not a methodology to practice, as some spiritual teacher says, until realization takes place. It's a misuse and misunderstanding of the purpose of self-inquiry, at least how Ramana Maharshi elaborated on that. Because he very clearly stated that upon awakening, Kundalini will proceed to Sushumna, and then the process will unfold spontaneously. No self-inquiry is required when Kundalini is active. It's a waste of time. You see? In fact, it's like when you go on a bicycle and learn to remain in balance, you don't need to tell yourself, keep wheeling, what is it like? Who is wheeling the wheels? Keep wheeling, you know? It becomes, yes, exactly, it's ridiculous. It's not required. See? I can give more mature, more adult examples if you want, you know. I can give plenty of examples with sex, you know, if that's more preferable. In Vienna, you know, like really, really giving it a tantric shot. When something is already really fully displaying its might and vertical and erectile, there's no need to do anything to make it erect. Okay? So self-inquiry here is that, you see? It becomes those things that children use on a back wheel. When they already perfectly run the bike, you just unscrew them and remove them on a side. That's what self-inquiry was. When a bike is now being run by sheer balance and a bit of leg power. So this is one thing. Second thing about, again, with reference and leaning on the discourses by Bhagavan, Ramana Maharshi, is with regard to within and without. Also fascinating response. He says that the reason why we speak about that is because of our experiences and the way we are accustomed to speak. But Kundalini is not within. It's within and without because it's consciousness. And if anything, we are within consciousness, not the other way around. You see? That in itself is belonged to a protocol. When I worked with people back in the days, there were a few things that, like following a protocol, my own protocol there. You see? Like, first of all, everything is fine. What you're going through is you're not crazy, you're not alone, like this. And then finally coming to this point, you want to find an understanding. This is what's happening. And it creates adjustments which is so subtle. So this is my response to what you have shared. So just reflect on this, see what makes sense, what you can make applicable, what applies to your situation. Discard what you don't feel applicable. But this is what I feel like relating in the moment, because you don't know this work and I don't know you. So this is a kind of our first encounter, first interaction, and you go straight into this very important aspect, so I cannot tell you more, right, of what else to do in terms of how to actually work with these experiences that may present themselves still in an undesirable, unpleasant, manner, despite of maybe feeling that Kundalini is already in a very, very high region. Okay, Martin?